I wanted to talk about a topic that is really important to me and near and dear to my heart. And it's because I truly enjoy helping people. And you can see that I hope you see that in the passion and the deliverables of my YouTube videos, my Google articles, my books. And it really boils down to is that there's a lot of bad information out there. And there's a lot of good information out there that is bad as it applies to someone's land, in particular land, even a neighboring land. And so that's why I became a whitetail consultant. I thought, this would be a great career. I already had a career as a real estate appraiser, full-time, overly busy. And I kind of started this off to the side in 2005. And it was, I received an award from the QDMA for 2004 Deer Manager of the Year. I had opportunities to go to client lands. And so in 2005, I began a business. I obviously feel that I can do a good job going to someone's property, and I've had that feedback from my clients. And that doesn't mean you make a connection with every client you go to. The point is that I feel for several different factors that I can do a great job on someone's land, that I can put together a proven, structured set of plan for their land. And I believe there's a lot of reason for the average landowner to hire a consultant to help them out. I'm going to go through a few reasons for that. Again, it goes back to I've been on lands this year where you go, there's bad recommendations made. A lot of those boil back to online consulting or over-the-phone consultations, which don't work. They're not very accurate. They can't be. And then you have to make major corrections. Food plots spent several $1,000s on, they're in the wrong location. And there's a lot of mistakes that can be made. That all boils back to experience. And I'm just giving you examples of my own. And I know there's other experienced people out there. And I'll give you an example of at least one of those coming up. But experience matters more than a degree. And I'll give you an example of that. For example, in 2005, when I started my business, I had 20 years in habitat improvements, hunting small parcels, hunting public land all over the place, and really getting that hunting foundation along with 10 years of my own property, planting trees, food plots, before I even started a career in this. I was 35. I wasn't, fresh out of school. In 2006 is one time I ever had a booth at a deer show to try to drum up some business. And I found that that's the worst way to drum up business. Actually, if you're out there writing and putting videos out and letting people see what you do, then I've always had way more clients than I could actually manage. And we're turning away at least 100 this year, probably closer to 150. So, but I had someone come up to me, and this is an interesting story, but I was at that booth. I was nervous, only into it 1 year. I had 4 clients my first year, 10 clients the second, and then 35, then 50, and then 70, and plus since that time. This is the second year in 2006. I was in the Green Bay Deer Classic, and I had someone come up to me and give me their card. And card was a doctoral candidate for wildlife biology. And he said, "I'm going to be your competition." And I was a little intimidated. I thought, oh boy, I didn't know anyone else was doing this in the upper, Midwest or UP in Michigan, Wisconsin, that area, northern Minnesota. And so I talked to him for a little bit just to get to know him. And in that process, I started thinking, I wonder where he hunts, how much hunting experience he has. And I asked him, I said, "Where do you hunt? Do you hunt up in the UP? Are you hunting down here in northern Wisconsin?" And his response really set in my mind that I would have an opportunity at this, because his response was, "I've been to school for the last 7 years. Do you think I've had time to hunt?" And I thought right away, if that's my average competition for going out and helping a landowner, helping them develop a hunting plan, a true hunting plan on their land, then that was no competition at all. And it ended up not being. So experience matters greatly. In fact, in school, you learn a lot of science, good applications of science that don't relate to the small parcel. And I'm talking small parcels. My average client is 100 acres. About 50% of my clients are 60 acres or less on a given year. I'll go to about 90 clients this year. And with those clients, even if they have 1,000 acres, that property does not encompass the entire 365-day life of a mature buck traditionally or typically. And so there's a lot of great science, timber management, how to manage timber for boards per foot, census studies that don't apply to small parcels, buck movements that don't apply to small parcels as it relates to daytime buck movement versus nighttime. So someone who's schooled, it's almost like they have to have another decade or two of experience to make sure that their schooling matches what actually takes place out on small parcels. There's not a lot of people that specialize in small parcels, 500 to 1,000 acres or less, and you really need to make sure that they have that experience level on those properties. And it can't be all in one location either. For example, I'll give you a few examples. If someone only fishes bass on a pond, in a certain pond behind their house, and they get to know that pond, how does that apply to the Mississippi River, Lake of the Ozarks, other lakes or Great Lakes, traditional inland lakes? How does it apply? And they don't know because you don't have that experience. You have to leave your own area to learn more about your own area. Golfing, same thing. If you only golf the same 9-hole course, 3-par course, how can you get to learn how to golf on Augusta or some brand name, big, huge name golf courses in another county, let alone another state or several states away? You have to have that experience, and especially as it relates to hunting and habitat, public land hunting, mature bucks from other areas to improve yourself and then bring it back to your own area. And that's one of the reasons for hiring a consultant. It's not just the experience level, it's the experience level of decades of learning mistakes from other people and themselves that they can bring to the table that you probably couldn't learn in a lifetime of just working on your own land. And you know, let's face it, land's expensive. So very important to, if you're going to make those steps and try to set that foundation. Now, it's a lot of years of fun work, but I find a lot of people that have worked on it for 5 or 10 years, they found diminishing returns, and then hiring a Whitetail consultant can turn it around in one quick season. We'll talk about that at the end. That experience matters. And so you really need to take a look, is that person full-time? Full-time, I mean, I know a lot of whitetail habitat managers that go to 10, 15, 20, 25 parcels a year. Folks, I'm here to tell you, you learn on every single parcel. I'm getting closer to 900 parcels. I don't know where I'm at, in the low 800s, mid 800s, somewhere around there in 26 states. Every property I go to, I learn something, or it reinforces a concept that I've already discovered. So it's very, very important that you learn from all these different areas and that you apply those back to given areas. For example, I'll say like Southern Michigan, for example, is really similar to Maryland. There's areas that are Kentucky hardwoods that are similar to a hardwood setting in Minnesota. The balances change, but again, it all goes back to the experience knowing from one to the other and how it relates, because not every habitat improvement relates to every property. For example, hinge cuttings, I think 20 to 25% of all parcels I go to can use hinge cutting, use that tool in the toolbox of habitat management, but they are not used on 75 or 80% of the other parcels. Full-time is very important. And I'll give you an example. Eric Long out of Ohio. He's a real good habitat manager, somebody I have a lot of respect for. Now, for his day job, he works for the state of Ohio as a wildlife biologist. And so he's really doing his after hours habitat management work while he's at work. He has a lot of experience that relates to the field and in the field experience for a long time. And that's a different, as opposed to someone being a school teacher or an outdoor writer or something and just trying to do this more on the side or more as a side business and really not gaining that level of experience. Eric does. He's one of those types of people. When you have that experience and you find someone that's working full-time, you find someone that's hunted in a lot of different areas and they can bring that experience level to your property and match improvements that are specific to your land, they have to, and I know this is going to bother some people if they haven't been bothered already, they have to show that they've been able to do this on their own for a long time before you can expect them to do it for you. So if they have no history of mature buck hunting experience, and what I mean is mature buck hunting, I mean on public land, small parcels, leased lands, not guided properties, not outfitted properties, areas where they have to hang their own tree stands. I've never shot a buck out of someone else's tree stand. I've always hung my own tree stands since I was a teenager. Some pretty bad tree stands where I had to shimmy up a tree, going back in the day, but I always chose my stand locations. I like to narrow down where those bucks are traveling and putting it all together and doing it on my own, I feel that if I couldn't do it on my own, why would I teach someone, or how could I teach someone? It's amazing, Major League Baseball. You know, a Major League Baseball club wouldn't even think about hiring a hitting coach that didn't have success in the major leagues. That's no different than hiring a whitetail consultant. Make sure they have a decade at least or more of experience, and preferably 15, 20 years before you hire them and expect them to do something on your land. I think it goes the other way around. Someone asked me a little while ago if I thought my clients expected more than I expected for them. And I think it's the other way around, because I've seen what you can do on a small parcel firsthand. There's 30 acres, 20 acres, 40 acres. I know the power of what a small parcel can do because I've had that experience, and I believe I have higher expectations for my clients than they have for themselves because I've experienced it. I've experienced it many times over. Small parcels. If you are not intimately familiar with mature buck hunting, mature buck experience, and how to apply that to your own land, then it's very, very hard to teach someone else how to do it when you haven't had that experience level yourself. It's not experience you can learn in a school. It's experience you can only learn in the field, and you have to do it over and over and over again. And the cool thing about whitetails is you learn on every parcel you go to, you learn on every hunt you go to, and you can never stop learning. People ask me, what am I going to do when I retire? I'm going to do this. I might not go to 90 parcels in a year, but I really want to go to at least 30, because I never want to stop learning. If I just sit on a really nice parcel someday, if I'm wealthy someday or rich, which I'll probably never be, I don't want to get complacent with this is the way it is on this parcel. I know a lot of people that have built 20, 30 giant buck harvests out of 1 to 2 tree stands in one location on their property over the course of 15, 20 years. And that doesn't mean that that translates into anything else. So that experience, buck harvest, really matters. Another thing, you really have to have a system of management. The reason I wrote my book in 2012 is because I wanted to define the concepts that I saw on land for a very long time and how it related to private land, food plots, access. And it's interesting, that book, people read it, they read the intro. It's not until the conclusion that I reveal that the intro related to a public land hunt. What I find is that whitetails are whitetails. They relate to people, each other the same. There's just a system of balance, large or small, based on the locations, the amount of habitat, amount of cover in each one of those areas, state by state. They're all reflective of each other. And so that system of management, depth of cover, bedding, layering, long linear food sources if available, perpendicular access, hunting like a predator, hiding your improvements, layering your habitat improvements, establishing patterns of use, making sure you're not gathering too many deer at the wrong time of the year, taking census at the right time of the year. All those concepts I wrote about, and I wanted to write about and define in that 2012 book because no one else was talking about this stuff. I wanted to make sure that I had that on paper. There's other people that have systems of management. I encourage you to find out what their system is. Ask what their system is. Ask how everything relates to each other. And in that way, you'll learn if that system of management is appropriate for them. That's why I come out with dozens and dozens of videos on this stuff over and over again, because I love teaching it. I love relaying my experience, and I love relaying the system of management that has worked for me back into the 90s. Doesn't matter if it's hunting weather whitetails for decades, how this all relates to small parcels. But I want to deliver that to you, and if you're looking for a whitetail consultant, you want to make sure that they can deliver that too, and that they have that system of management that applies. Deliverables, what to expect. This is a tough one. It's always tough because if you're actually successful and working hard, you have very little time. You find that, you know, when I first started out in this business in 2005, I charged $500 a day. I quickly learned that you couldn't make any money at that. My average client is $400 to $500 in expenses, and that's even being able to consolidate and work out of one hotel room for 7 or 8 clients in a given area. So the deliverables, that's why I work very hard on the day I'm with a client to draw up your plan at the end of the day. And if someone else is not, I can tell you it doesn't get any clearer 2 or 3 weeks later, or a month later, or 6 weeks later, or 6 months later. the best time to draw out that plan is right there with my client, and that's what I do. And so I draw that out with them. It takes about an hour. It takes a lot longer with conversation, and I can honestly tell you that my average client day is about 10 and a half with my clients, 10 and a half hours. 2 clients on my last trip in Michigan were 13 hours. One of them had 6 hours driving on top of that, round trip to the hotel. So very, very long days. You can imagine the last thing I want to do when I get back to the hotel is talk whitetail. The last trip I was in my motel room for 5 minutes on 2 nights, and I was asleep. Literally went to bed within 5 minutes of walking into my room. I want to make sure that I'm covering 98% of your plan when I leave. You have a working plan, you have a diagram, you have a foundation for your property. We've talked all day about it. We meet in the morning. I get to know you. I get to know your resources. By the time we go on the property, we're 40–50% of the way there. On the property, we get to 100% of what I feel that system works for you. And so when we're talking about it, we sometimes mark trees if we have enough time. We're talking about, I'd cut this tree, that tree, this is where your stand should go. We're marking stand locations sometimes. And then when we get back and write that up in the afternoon, then I'm writing that up for an hour and 15 minutes. Then we're taking notes on it up to 2 hours. Doesn't really matter. I don't have a time frame. And so when you're hiring someone, you want to make sure they're not working on an 8-hour day. You want to make sure they give you deliverables specific to your land. I encourage people to record, film, take extensive notes. I'll be there until you're done and until we've hashed this out for too long. But when I leave and when anyone else leaves, you should have a plan and be able to go full bore on it the next day. And that's my goal for every property. And the only reason we don't is sometimes a client might want to leave early. There's something they have to go to, but I don't like that. If we know that ahead of time, we actually don't schedule the client. If they're going to be gone at the end, they can only work till 5, and I'm not going to have enough time, or 4, then we just won't go to that client, because I want to have that engagement at the end of the night. I want you to buy in, because I have a long history of hundreds of clients. If you do the work, even if you just look at that foundation, no words or anything, you can go put those tree stands, those food plots in those locations, you'll find success. I find the clients at work find a lot of success, and that's what really enjoyable about doing this. Again, it goes back to helping people. If I'm not helping you, I don't want to just take your fee just to take a fee. I really, truly want to help. So if you do the work from someone else, even if they have a different system, I encourage, if you look at someone else, don't look at my stuff. Go on what they say, because if you start slanting in things that I do into theirs, it's going to create a mess. And same with them and to me. And so pick a system, go with it. Pick a proven system, go with it. Finally, they should offer some type of turnkey service. We have a system where we're completing all of this during the day. In the future, if there's questions, then it boils down to a quick text or quick email. No different than if you had a question for your doctor, attorney, whatever it might be, your therapist. You have those quick questions that are important, but we've fulfilled the amount of info and deliverables in that day. I talked to some of my clients for many years. I have many of my clients that use the turnkey services from Ross Fernandez, my partner in the turnkey area. He'll bulldoze food plots, create water holes, dig in water holes, put up mock scrapes, plant switchgrass. He cuts a lot of bedding areas and a lot of travel corridors. He's a genius with a chainsaw, very hard worker. And so Ross actually was a client 11 years ago, 12 years ago. And he already knew a lot by the time I got there, and we became friends. He was really into this. Talked. Rich, who hunts with me, he's a close friend of mine now. He was a previous client. Corey out in Iowa, I talk about all the time. It was 10 years ago that I went and visited Corey. I have a lot of clients that I've talked to for many, many years. Scott in Southwest Wisconsin, and I'm gonna stop naming them. Bill in Michigan, Frank in Michigan. There's so many. I will stop naming them because I don't want to leave people out. But there are people I talk to on a monthly basis, and it's just a quick text or two. If you're expecting to hire that consultant for the day, they deliver everything to you, and you've shut that door as far as everything's been absorbed, everything's been delivered, and then you expect them to answer 9 questions at a time several times over the next year. It's just not realistic, especially if they're successful and they're working hard and they have a lot of clients. It's hard to find an hour and a half to answer questions for. 6 months down the road, 4 months down the road. So I want to hear I always tell my clients, I want to hear from you 20 times over the next 6 months, not 20 times all at once. I love that continued conversation, become close friends with a lot of clients. And that's the type of relationship I want. I want that ongoing relationship, because then I get feedback. So I get feedback all the time of what's going on in the woods. This works, this doesn't work. And again, that goes back to that learning and being able to learn by the more clients and more properties that I visit. Turnkey services are important because a lot of clients, they want someone that can actually build food plots for them. They can get the work done. I go to clients that want to do all the work, and they have the time to do that. And I go to other clients that have less time and more money. And clients that a lot of them would want to do the work. They just don't have that time to complete out in the woods and get it done. So we can get it done for you, and another whitetail habitat consultant that's successful and doing this full time can get it done for you too. I know this is a hard topic. There's going to be people that are making comments, stupid to hire a whitetail consultant. Well, a whitetail consultant, a quality one, can give you the experience and know-how and lay a foundation for your whitetail plan on your property, even as it relates to surrounding public land, what you should do, how you should enter, what stands around public land around there. They should be able to do that, and they should be able to give you information that you would otherwise never be able to experience on your own unless you go to hundreds of properties in multiple states and bring that information back to yourself. Public land, private land. I hunt on public land every year, and I know a lot of quality whitetail consultants will do that. But you have to be intimately familiar with the hunt, intimately familiar with a mature buck, shown that history of success, have a plan, being able to put it together for clients, have that high level of experience before you even start a career, and be able to put that down for someone in a day, give them deliverables. And if you find someone that can put those together for you, you're going to find a quality whitetail consultant. And again, I know I'm going to tick some people off by talking about this stuff, but it's something I very firmly believe in. And I'm sure there's people that haven't agreed with something I've done on their land, or I've rubbed the wrong way in the past. But you're always trying to improve your game, always trying to learn about whitetails, and you're trying to keep people from making mistakes that cost them years and thousands of dollars, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars, to realize that they've made, until they're into that black hole where it's been diminishing returns, nocturnal properties, done extensive habitat work. They finally realize a decade, 12 years later, what they might have done wrong. They hire someone, and I look at it like everything that I've talked about right here, what's great about this, not trying to scare anybody, because you can turn it around this year. You can turn it around with a quality plan, with quality information. You can turn it around this year. You do not need thousands of trees planted. You don't need to put an extensive amount of work in. You're changing the way you hunt. You're hunting like a predator. You're creating habitat improvements that are actually appropriate for your situation and give you the largest bang for your buck right now, no pun intended. And I want you to experience these changes immediately, and it can be done. You don't have to wait years. If someone's telling you have to plant thousands of trees and wait for years, you don't have to do that. It can be done this year. You can change your nocturnal properties, because it all boils back to the lowest hole in the bucket is how you hunt the land. And I want you to find someone that's proven they can hunt their own situations, that they can develop their own plans, their own systems. It's work for them, and they can bring it back to you. I hope you find that success. I hope you found this helpful. And again, it all goes back to my entire channel. My Google is just trying to help you out and make sure you have success this hunting season, this habitat season, and beyond.